Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast, a podcast where we're seeking to lead change. We're also seeking to understand. We're also as a platform for leaders to come together to unite, to develop and empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, and community. I'm your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my other host, my co-host, John LeBrun. Today, we are joined by our returning guest. Anybody that returns to the platform is not a guest. Our returning family, Jay Razzouk, who has joined us to have a conversation about legal advice for scaling 6- and 7-figure businesses. Jay, after a decade of driving corporate reform at Fortune 100 companies and addressing matters in more than 20 states, he founded ProScale Legal. With his premium legal templates and secure scale TM method, Jay equips online business owners with little to known legal strategies and paperwork that most coaches, consultants, and mastermind leaders don't know they need. Jay's approach goes beyond just keeping businesses legally protected. He helps online entrepreneurs develop trusting relationships with their ideal clients, contractors, and collaborators. Jay's strategies increase ROI and enable high-ticket business owners to protect their legacy and scale their empire with peace of mind and joy. And again, today, Jay has joined us right here on the Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. Jay, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me back. It's great to be with you both.
Yeah, absolutely. Last time we talked about how to help businesses get their business formed on the right foundation. And towards the end of the conversation, man, we start getting into some things. We had to have you back. And so that's exactly what we're going to tap into tonight about legal advice for scaling 6- and 7-figure businesses. And I feel like since the last time that we've talked, there's been so many changes in the financial arena with the, I don't know if the word evolution is the proper term for it, with NFTs and cryptocurrencies that have infiltrated the marketplace and businesses. That's a whole nother thing they have to worry and concern themselves about. And so what have you seen lately that has kind of shifted the trajectory for those 6- and 7-figure businesses that would help them? And what advice would you really give them with the things that we've been through since the pandemic and everything going forward? How have things really changed?
I think right now, the biggest factor that is just pressing on everybody is just the global feeling of fear. And like even for coaches, the big coaches I've seen, they're encountering issues where the contractors they're dealing with are acting strangely because they're afraid. Their clients are backing out, asking for refunds because they're afraid. It's becoming this real pressure point for a lot of people. How do you deal with this fear now that's in the marketplace? And this uncertainty, we shift from dealing with one crisis to now we have this war going on and another crisis, and then there's a talk of what will happen next with the economy. So there's just we're not given a break to catch our breath, it feels like, right? And now inflation's coming, but there is hope. There really is hope. And in fact, this morning I was working on a post talking about the abundance mindset. And people in the coaching space, you hear that a lot. Those who are, wealthy speak of it a lot. It's sort of the secret to success, the abundance mindset. But it normally, right, guys, normally it's used in the context where someone's trying to sell you something really expensive, right? Have you encountered that?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Prove you really have the abundance mindset by buying my, multi-$1,000 course.
Uh-huh.
But I'm trying to challenge the leaders, the big leader, of large institutions, the big coaches, to lead by example, and now treat your clients with an abundance mindset. Treat your employees with an abundance mindset, because this is really, we're going to prove what you're worth. I mean, I like, what James talks about, right? Well, if you have faith, prove it by your works. Mm-hmm. And abundance mindset really does come down to faith. So if you really do believe there's infinite amount of resources, you believe in what you have, you believe that you got a God there to back you up, do what is right. There's never been a time where it's more important than now to do what is right And what is right really is to love. And it goes back to everybody's in fear. What is the solution to that fear? And we're told perfect love casts out fear. We got to use that love, show that love, and that really is going to cause so many of the problems to go away. I was just last night on a call with a friend who was dealing with the issue where a client is struggling and again wants like a refund. It seems like they have money issues, and I told him, show her love. That's what she really needs to calm her down, and that might be worth more than the refund.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships are invaluable. You can never put a price tag on that.
Yep.
And if you really show that person true, genuine love, suddenly now that $300, $500 they're asking for back will seem so petty.
John, go ahead, bro. I think I see questions swirling out your mind.
I was thinking you said something, and I thought this is the perfect time to run. So last time this happened, I was coming out of college. Well, nothing's happened yet. But I think when you speak of global fear, they're not just thinking of post-pandemic, which is part of it. I think businesses are afraid of what's about to happen in the economy and so forth with wars and all the different impacts. Well, if people remember back in 2008 when this happened, I had just come out of college. It was a little hard to find the job I wanted, but whatever, I still found stuff. But companies who didn't just start hoarding and not growing, started actually running, now are light years ahead of all the other companies that waited to 2013 or whatever they waited to start running. Because in 2012, 2013, when companies finally said, okay, I think it's safe to come out, and they poked their head out and said, let's go, let's start jogging. The other companies were already sprinting, and they'd already built up that momentum. And so now we look at it like, wow, they've become these multi-million dollar, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollar companies, and they didn't start. And you look at their start time. When was it? 2007, 2009, 2011. When everybody else was scared, they were out there posting, putting things out there, talking to clients, getting business going, because they were like, what do you have to lose? Look, people are so scared of. I'm so tired of hearing people say milk's going to be $5. I'm empathetic the fact that it puts a burden on some people's pocketbook. I get it, but you can't save your way through this. You got to out-earn the problem. So I know we're kind of talking about like what businesses can do to scale up, which I think is perfect, because right now they've got to start going in the offense, going in attack mode. Exactly. What are some things they can do right now? You say they're afraid, but is there something they can do to maybe add reassurance to their clients, or something to help their clients feel more secure so they can keep those contracts, grow those contracts, things like that?
That is exactly it. It goes back to, I think that love creates that safe place that will help someone calm down and not be in a state of fear. Just think about it. Like, our natural reaction is we just want to be like back in our mother's arms and have them wrap around us, right? And that's like the safest place we could think of. And if we can sort of create that environment for the people around us that, hey, I really do care for you, and don't worry, you know what, it will be okay. To hear someone else actually say it is going to be okay, and I'm here with you through it, I think can make all the difference in the world for someone, for that client, for that employee. But when it comes to the clients, like especially in like the coaching industry or so many services industries, like you are being paid for, I would say, first and foremost, your relationship. And I try to help coaches understand it. It is your relationship that really is the most important thing. If you have that good relationship with your client, you are going to be able to motivate them better, inspire them, be able to get better outcomes. Without it, you could give them all the best information in the world, but then you're just a teacher. You're just a source of content, and that's it. The coach is the relationship.
Is there anything? Let me rewind that. I had heard from somebody recently. He was talking about how he uses guarantees to help ease clients, saying, I guarantee certain things. He said, so many people are afraid to put guarantees out there to reassure their product or service. not saying that that his service will always 100% work necessarily, but it's saying I guarantee my work, otherwise, probably refunds or something along those lines. Is that something that's possible? Is there any legal ramifications to doing something along those lines? Like, hey, I guarantee my coaching will help you get to this level as long as you follow these steps. If it doesn't, hey, don't worry about it. It's on me.
There could be the right time for that, and maybe when you're just starting off, and it's a big risk for somebody to work with you. It might work for your first few clients to have that sort of guarantee clause in there to make someone feel like the risk is much lower. But for the most part, I generally do not recommend that. The reason is, and this is what I help everybody understand, is what is a contract? When you step back and look at it, it is a set of enforceable expectations. And it's all about the expectations now. So what expectations are you setting? And then, what is going to happen then when you don't deliver on those? And the guarantee is one of the purest forms of setting an expectation that then could set you up for problems down the road. So it's better to go in. I think, your communication, your advertising should be setting the right expectations. Your contract, yes, should be reinforcing and backing up those expectations. And then what you actually deliver, hopefully, should be exceeding those. And when it comes to promising outcomes, though, that is really tricky, right? Because especially like for me, I work in the coaching space. You can do everything in the world as the coach. You could give them the best advice. You could give them the best content. You can go overboard. But if that person just doesn't embrace the right mindset, doesn't put in the effort, they're not going to get that outcome. So that's where you have to be hesitant with the guarantees. But it's a good question. Really,
that was a really good question.
That's where I go back to, what can you really promise?
Yeah.
You can promise to be there for them. You can promise to, provide that loving, safe, supportive environment. You can promise to give them information, give them access, those sorts of things that have the value. But the outcome that's beyond your control.
So the guarantee is not, hey, you'll 10x over the next 12 months. The guarantee is, if you use my steps, if you don't get what you're looking for, I'm going to stick with you until and help you see growth the best I can. Something along those lines.
I still would even necessarily do that. Just like I am, I will be available this amount of time for you. I will be, do this. Okay. And if they're having problems, that's where you could go over and above. You haven't promised it, but you will surprise them and say, hey, I only promise you, X number of hours a month, but you know what? I'm going to give you double or triple. I'm going to, give you access to this other content I don't give most people.
Okay.
Gotcha. I think that's really good. That was a really good question, because John's question almost reminded me of a lot of people that come on Shark Tank with medical ideas. And the first thing they will ask them, hey, you can't really guarantee this product if you take this pill, you will lose 5 pounds. And they're like, is it FDA approved? Has this been, scientifically proven? So you have to be careful with the guarantees. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. That question was really good. Mm-hmm. We're talking about scaling businesses and helping entrepreneurs. But what about the entrepreneurs that have just e-commerce strictly? They're just online 100%. There has to be, I'm assuming there's a difference of strategy that an entrepreneur that is strictly online has to have than someone that's brick and mortar, right? And so what scaling strategies can they use that, hey, I don't have a brick and mortar, I don't have a building, I'm strictly e-commerce, I'm strictly online entrepreneur. What advice would you give to that individual? Because we see that as we talked about backstage, that is the trend, especially among our generation, the ones coming up, is, hey, why would I get a brick and mortar? I could be more successful just selling my product on Amazon or just having my own e-commerce store. What advice would you give to the online entrepreneur?
So I think that's a great lead into actually a framework I have to help understand how your business scales.
Okay.
And it will answer, like, how is the brick and mortar going to be different than an online? So there's sort of, a business is unique, right? Compared to us humans, we occupy 3 dimensions plus time, we say. But a business is kind of on paper.
I'm sorry, Jay. I don't want to cut you off, but I don't want to skip past that. You said that you dropped it on us, but I need you to unpack that. Like, you said we occupy 3 dimensions plus time. What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, we have height, width, depth, and then time. So people say there's sort of like 4 dimensions which we exist in, at least we know of. So those are so we exist in those dimensions. And so when we grow, so you start off as a little, like, you got some kids right now, both of you, and you see them growing. How do you see them growing?
And everything.
Physically and mentally. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So actually there's other dimensions there. So they're growing physically. I mean, you could take the ruler, you can measure, okay, they grew out this way in width. Right. They're now getting taller. You take out the ruler, right? Or my mom used to mark on the wall, like, okay, here's at this date, here's now that date. And then mentally, right? Yeah, we have like every year, you graduated, you're now in a new class. And we have these markers supposedly for knowledge and achievement. So in the business, it grows in its own way. It's a little bit different. And there's sort of 4 directions of the compass, sort of how I see it. 4 directions of the compass, and each one starts with a P. So you have, first one is people. A business will grow in terms of people. It'll grow in proceeds. It will grow in possessions. And then it will grow in places. Potentially.
That's good.
So when it's growing in terms of people, that could be the number of owners it has increases. Like if you go public, that's a huge explosion in your owners. You grow in terms of your customers. You grow in terms of your employees, and maybe even strategic partners. There's lots of different elements to how people make up your business. But basically, you got a lot of relationships and interactions that will grow. And as your number of interactions grow, you now have more risk associated with it. More potential opportunities for something could go wrong, but you also have a lot more opportunities, right, for things to go well. And now you need to start thinking in terms of, okay, let me start standardizing things. So use a standardized contract, let's say, for all your customers. Make it terms of service so that you don't have to write a new contract every time, but everybody who joins your program or whatever, they have one contract that applies to all of them. And that's good because now you have consistency. The bigger you get, you now have to really start worrying about anti-discrimination laws. Like for most businesses, when you hit 15 employees, you come under some civil rights acts. Then at 25 employees, now you got to watch out for age discrimination. At 50 employees, now you have to provide health insurance coverage under the Affordable Care Act. So you have all these triggers now at the number of employees you have. So that's one element of scaling. So the next one is proceeds. So this is like your revenues, factoring into your expenses, your profit. The big influence there, the big factor that comes into play there is taxes, right? I mean, for most people, your number one guaranteed major expense is going to be the number of taxes you'll probably pay, unless you don't make anything. But there's also, you got to worry about sales taxes potentially. So especially when this is a nightmare for those people who are like selling on Amazon, or it was, I should say. Because you're selling to people in New York, you're selling to people in New Jersey, you're selling to people in California, and every state might have different tax laws, different issues when it comes to how you treat the sale of goods. Even like in California, services aren't taxed, but in another state, services might be. So now you have this huge nightmare when you're online, and this gets into places. So as you're growing online, in fact, you're occupying a lot of spaces, theoretically. Brick and mortar, you know exactly where you're located. But when you're online, you are interacting with people in multiple states. the people I work with, they have independent contractors or employees located across the United States. And now you got laws of each of those potential states coming into play. Like if you're selling to someone in California, California will want to protect that person located in California. If you're hiring someone in New York, New York will want to protect that person hired in New York. And I think a lot of rapidly scaling business owners don't know about this. And I've talked to people who've got into 6 figures, maybe 7 figures really quickly, and then suddenly implode because issues like this weren't properly understood and dealt with soon enough. When they learned about it, it almost was too late. And like talk about the proceeds, as you're growing really fast, your tax bill can grow extremely fast. And if you're shifting from being employed to now self-employed, you probably don't realize you have to figure out ahead of time how much taxes you're going to make that year and pay them ahead of time. Or else the government is going to come back and charge you a late penalty because you didn't prepay what you didn't know how much you were going to make.
You said prepaid how much you're going to make?
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're a W-2 income, when you're an employee, your employer is constantly chipping away from your paycheck and paying it to the government. Mm-hmm. But when you're self-employed, you should be quarterly paying that to the government. Ahead of time, what you're going to make.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so because of this factor, I've talked to people who make a huge amount of money in a year for the first time, maybe ever being self-employed, and then have a $20,000 tax bill come out of the blue.
Yeah.
And didn't know, I should have had an S corporation. I should have, been paying myself, wages and taking the other income differently. I probably should have set up a trust. I should have done, I should have been doing this and this for deductions. As you're scaling and growing, especially really quickly, you need to immediately reach out to an accountant and start strategizing on how to keep your tax bills down. That accountant will more than well pay for themselves. And then the fourth one, talk about possessions. That one, as you're building a brand, what's really nice about being online, it's really easy to meet the requirements for having a trademark. Because you're engaging in interstate commerce. But the downside of engaging in interstate commerce is then a lot of requirements can kick in too. The federal government has a lot more control over you. But again, go back to what we're talking about possessions. You could build brands and be able to get federal protection for it easier. As you're making content, your content, no matter what, is going to be protected. If it's original content you created, like this podcast right now, you're going to get the copyright to it. And you can register that and then be able to stop people from just taking this video and posting on YouTube and getting the ad money from it. So
can I ask you a question on that content? So one question has been up in the air and I've never got a firm answer. If you have somebody if there's a content creator and they have someone like yourself, a guest or something, is there a preference does it matter if they sign over, do they have to sign over rights to media or anything like that? Or is it ours?
Good question.
That's a personal question. Because I've seen both. Like, hey, you have to have something for them to sign saying they get all the rights. That we have rights to this media and we're not paying you for being on here. And that kind of thing.
This is something I like, sort of scaring podcasters a little bit, talking about how, man, I have yet to have a podcaster ask me to sign something. I think the bigger you get, the more important it becomes. I'm sure Joe Rogan, for example, has everybody sign something.
Yeah.
But there's the issue isn't necessarily who owns the copyright. As the one making the recording, you could say maybe you have the rights to the copyright. It could be a question of whether it's a joint work, but the copyright probably isn't the bigger issue. The issue more is to what extent do you have the right to use someone's name, image, likeness.
And likeness, yeah.
Yeah. So we call those like rights of publicity.
Yeah. But to me, it's no similar than if I had somebody come in to my company and just talk to my team. and I didn't agree to pay them anything. They just showed up. They did it. I happened to record it. And does that mean they can at any time come back like, hey, you need to pay me for that likeness? I mean, it was like, it's the same idea in my mind as anything. Like, if there was an agreement to pay, then even if, let's say we had an agreement for me to get, and you signed an agreement to come on the show, and which it didn't happen. Obviously, you're here because you're just a friend of the show. But let's say there was, and then we didn't pay it. I would think the only legal ramification would be you trying to do a small claims court to get payment on the service, not so much, a royalty on likeness for the next 12 years.
Yeah. And I think also, to even go further back, you could say that there might be an implied agreement. There's not all contracts have to be in writing.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, exactly. So you don't want to be necessarily in the no written contract zone. It's always good to have it in writing, because again, contracts are all about expectations. And if the expectations aren't in writing, now you can easily change the story later on. But it seems like I really love the podcast industry, if you call it an industry, right? Where there's like this unspoken rule that when you come onto someone's podcast, you're giving them the permission to use your name, image, likeness, and it's a win-win with the expectation. You get a bit more publicity, you get more recognition, and everybody benefits.
How would you like, because if it's not written, you talked about the implied contract, how would you prove? Because isn't at that point, it's like he said, she said type of ordeal. How would that stand up? You know what I mean? If something was to go left with a guest, they're trying to maybe sue you or say, hey, you did this, and there was nothing written, we just had an implied contract. How would that play out?
I mean, if you actually really wanted to litigate it, I would turn to like industry practices, like just say, this is what everybody does. Or most podcasts is what we do. There is this unspoken rule everybody knows. This person showed up on 100 other podcasts, never sent any document. So there's things you could do. But at the end of the day, though, I think I even had helped someone who they went on someone's program, delivered a lot of value, and things went south and didn't trust that person. And I said, you know what? I think you could just revoke your permission and tell them that they can't keep using your stuff. And there was nothing really that would keep her from revoking that permission. And that is the downside of not having an agreement, is then they might have ability to take back permission they may have given. So it's better to have it in writing. But again, like, have you guys had problems? Has anybody had problems? It's usually not an issue.
No, we have a form. But then again, at the same time, it's so hard to get signed, because the bigger the guest, they now have legal teams. So then the legal team has to review it. And then there's verbiage, and you get things like, hey, it's a little vague, or things like that. And I'm like, so it's either don't worry about the signed form or don't come on the show and stuff like that. So we have one. We've gone back and forth on the whole thing. Obviously, we didn't send it to you. But you just find your way around my legal jargon. No, I'm just kidding. And you would probably look at it and be like, John, this is terrible. But it was just basically saying like, hey, we're going to record this and we don't have to pay you for using the recording. But, at the same time, if somebody came on the show and then a month later they didn't like us and they're like, I don't want to be represented by UnScripted. Like, I don't want to be associated. We would just take it's not worth it to us.
Exactly.
But I get that some people wouldn't. Like, it's our recording, using it however we want. And I get that if I go on someone's show and then, because they look like a good representation of me too, as well, and then they're acting like idiots a month later, and I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm associated with that. I probably would also say, hey guys, do not put that show on the air, because I don't want anybody to know that I was even like half friends with you today. But I'm just saying, right? There are some podcasters out there. You're like,
no, sure.
And this is where I think you get back to, okay, what's next level legal looking like? And next level legal is really relationships oriented. When you have good relationships, when you really get to know people, when you treat people right, you get to more or less a state where you're ready treating people as they expect. And you don't necessarily need to lay that out in a document. It's still good to be backed up by the document, and the document can help clarify expectations. So I'm not saying there's no role for contracts, but saying first and foremost, operate in a zone where you actually are understanding people's expectations, helping set the right expectations and fulfilling them. And the greatest expectation of all that I think we all have, and most of us aren't aware of it, is we do expect to be loved.
Well, I think a lot what you're talking about, I'm in the middle of reading a book called The Speed of Trust. And I think a lot what you're talking about is trust, the trust factor. Because a lot of times we have to litigate everything, so we don't trust the individual that we're doing business with or that we're in a relationship with. And so because trust is low, to make up for that lack of trust, we've got to write every single thing down. Like, hey, let's come to agreement and put this in black and white. There was a story in the book talking about Warren Buffett. He made like almost $1 billion deal. And the guy that he was doing the deal with just gave him his word over the phone. He's like, okay, I'm going to take your word for it. And he did it just like that. There was nothing signed. And the guy kept his word because there was that relationship equity built, as you're talking about. So I think that's an important part in business. Business can be very shisty, you know, and it could be very each man for themselves. You know, we're lions and tigers out here, but when you have that relationship equity, I think that's what you've been alluding to. Most of the conversation is building that. If you have that relationship equity with your partner, then you really don't have to take those necessary measures to litigate so much things, right?
I just saw today, Mark Zuckerberg apparently was quoted as saying more or less that, you know, we do kids a disservice by teaching them to be so outcome and objective based. And we need to be much more relationships oriented. And that really is a major difference when you're dealing with people at the higher levels, is they understand the importance of relationships. And the CEOs aren't necessarily the brightest, smartest people on the planet. There's, you know, some superhumans like Steve Jobs and maybe Elon, but most of them are ordinary people, but they're really good with the relationships. And that's the most important thing for a long-lasting relationship. And when you start burning your customers, burning your workers, you're going to put yourself in a death spiral for your business.
It seems to me, since we're talking about legalities, I knew somebody who did he passed away, but he did all his business on a handshake. And he told them, hey, I do things on a handshake. Now, if they said, I'd like a contract, he's like, for sure. But he did things on a handshake. And he may have had a couple legalities or whatever, but still. But I think the goal was, and when I was studying what he was doing, is, let's be honest, you can have 1 million contracts in place and still go through a ridiculous lawsuit. I mean, it's just how it is.
Yep.
But his focus was doing business with good, trusted people. So regardless of whether he had a contract in place or not, he treated them well, and they treated him well based on his expectations of, as you call it, love. And I think it just mitigated all of the issues as far as people going to court, because they resolved their differences as people. As far as, if I'm sure there was arguments and things came up, how was there not? I mean, he had lots of properties and so forth. It had to, but he probably said, let's just talk this through and figure it out, versus someone's reaction saying, I'm getting an attorney, or someone trying to falsely sue him for something and he say, I have a contract. But does the contract really, even if you win the case, how many thousands and thousands of tens of thousands of dollars you spend on court fees and attorneys?
Exactly.
And so forth?
It's usually not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's why so many people say, "Oh, look, they settled out of court." I'm like, yeah, I'd probably saved 2 years of court fees, but
exactly.
Fees, but
this is where having the abundance mindset in the way you approach your relationships pays off. You know, you make these short-term sacrifices for much longer gains.
Yeah,
but so many people play the short game of just burning bridges, eating the smaller fish, and it'll come back and haunt them.
So when you're saying the phrase you put it was the new legal something was basically
next level, right?
Relationships. Next level of legal is relationships. Yeah. I'm guessing what you mean by that is it's beyond contracts. It's doing good business with good people, period. And that's how you can keep your business successful and out of so many legal issues. So when you take so if I sum it up, if you take the short road to quick money, sketchy relationships, don't expect to have long-term abundance in business. Does that sound about right?
100%. And I really do want to reinforce what you're saying about, there's a component of doing your end to feed and have a good relationship. It really also involves you selecting the right relationships. That is so important. Deal with the right people. And I teach this. I have a 5-step process I teach people to, protect themselves. And the second point is build the right community with the right people. Because you can have the best contract in all the world, but if you sign it with the wrong person, it could be bad from the onset. And that contract will be meaningless. It'll still be litigated. You're going to be out hundreds of thousands of dollars legal fees anyway. So yeah, be careful with who you contract. That is also as important as how you treat people. And it is a challenge because I see it often. There's just going to be this temptation to feed out, to screen out a lot of people like with mental health issues. And I think that's going to be a major issue we're going to have to tackle as a society, because they're this, and it's not everybody, right? People with depression, anxiety, we're not talking about that. But when you're dealing with people who are extreme, like bipolar disorder, emotional dysregulation, we're just now really becoming aware of these issues and realizing, that a major portion of the population, like 15% or more, has these problems, and they can't control their emotional outbursts. They can't, what might make us a little bit agitated is going to be greatly amplified with them. And so we're going to have to be much more conscious and aware of how we get people.
I'm not laughing at anybody with that, but 15%,
yeah,
that's a lot.
It's surprisingly
the total population number. that's a lot. That's a whole. I never have thought about that, but and I really wasn't even aware that was an issue when it came to business. But that's very interesting.
Most of the people who reach out to me help them with disputes. They're dealing with someone with like one of these personality disorders.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that, I've filmed like 150 interviews for a documentary on mental health, really got aware on these issues. And I realized that, okay, yeah, when you're not dealing with an ordinary human being, you can't approach it the ordinary way. And that's going to be another component to next level legal, is really understanding how to really then work with these people who are not able to really control themselves.
So, that all has to do with that word strategy then. There has to be strategy.
It's really strategy.
Yeah. John, did you have anything else, bro?
No, it was really good. I really appreciate those steps you gave, and then how we got into the weeds a little bit. Was really what I was hoping to get for people to listen to. Now, did I hear you say something like you teach 5 steps? Is that a course you're giving or something like that?
I actually, it's funny you ask. I actually am just about to launch. I don't want to call it a course, but it's like this whole package where I'm going to be building out legal templates that a scaling service provider would need.
I'm giving you a layup here. Tell them where to find it.
Okay, go to proscalelegal.com. I don't know if it's available yet, but by the time you see this, it'll probably be up there, proscalelegal.com.
Yeah.
And we'll have there where you can, this huge program with the legal templates, but then content, advice, and access to me to really take people to the next level.
Wow. Jay, it's so cool to see you grow.
Yeah.
I know we just met like 6 months ago, probably 8-9 months ago, whatever, but it's so cool to see your influence and your business grow. Just all the things you're adding. And man, you were next level today. Thanks so much.
Hey, well, it was a blast. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, we've got a new segment that we always wrap up with now called the off script, that we ask our guests now to give us their off script moment. It doesn't have to deal with what we've been talking about financial. That's kind of what we call it, off script. Just something that's on your heart that you want to leave with our listeners.
Oh boy. Stuff. I feel like I really did nail those key points. I just want to circle back on really the importance of, I think, living really in every aspect of your life, the abundance mindset. Like don't fall to the trap of being in fear. Like really, that's what the enemy wants you to experience. But really embrace the abundance mindset. Have that faith that you will be taken care of. You're going to be okay. Tomorrow is going to be, even if it might be challenging, you will get through it. And really what matters most is be that light in the world to help others feel safe, help others to feel that love and attention and know that they too can make it. And together we can all arrive on the other end okay.
I love it. As John mentioned, go to www.proscalelegal.com. Follow Jay on his social media at Razzouk, JayRazzouk on social media for those that are listening. Then also, again, www.proscalelegal.com. Now, Jay, I don't know if you had this the last time that we came on, but I read in your bio this time that I think you're doing masterminds now too.
Is it helping people with masterminds? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I saw something about masterminds. Okay. So is that available on the website as well? They can get help with if they're in that field.
Yeah. I would reach out. We're working on templates for all those things.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Incredible. And again, as always, stay connected with us here on Unscripted. You can join and support our show on patreon.com/unscripted leadership. Follow us on all social media platforms at Unscripted Leadership. Check out our website, unscripted-leadership.com. And of course, you can find our podcast literally any podcast platform. Again, we say thank you, Jay, again, for coming on and sharing in this conversation about legal advice for scaling 6-7-figure businesses. And I believe these principles apply to any, wherever spectrum of business you fall on the scale. The principles that were given in this conversation will help every leader, every entrepreneur that are aspiring to scale and do better.
But it gets definitely more important the bigger you get.
Oh, absolutely. 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 And Jay, we may have to talk off camera so you can give us an NDA agreement. But well, let me wrap up. As always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. We're here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time, God bless you.